All right. Shalom elect. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, brothers, sisters, and sojourners of Israel. This is Dr. Ephraim. Today's date is June 7th, 2021. And I'm going to get right into it because this is a pretty thorough and comprehensive lesson that I'm doing today. As a matter of fact, for those of you who are familiar with my original 3-hour groundbreaking video that uncovered the E1B1A DNA haplotype as the holy haplotype of the children of Israel, while this particular video will not be 3 hours, but I doubt very seriously it'll be less than an hour. So I'd rather you have to break it up, listen to half now, half later. But I need each and every one of you to listen to this complete lesson and this complete video. And for those who, are pretty new around here or who aren't really aware of me and how I do things, I go into great lengths to research these lessons and bring it forth to you all. So I don't have time or entertain, any type of debate or contentions or anything like that. I'm doing the research and I'm presenting it to you, and that's where it is. So anything else is up to you. All right, I've done my part. Okay, so I really don't have the time to entertain every single question or because my thing is this: all the questions I need to answer are in this presentation. You just have to stop being lazy, which I've already done the presentation for you, done the research, and just listen. Just when you have some time, just get some headphones, whatever the case may be, and just hit play, and you're all good. All right, but there's a lot to uncover here with this lesson, and when it's all said and done, you'll be able to put it with my comprehensive 3-hour video with the E1B1A, because this is definitely like a follow-up, a much-needed, long overdue follow-up of dealing with the DNA of the ancient Hebrew Israelite nation. Okay, there's so much out there, right? And I've said this before. The quote unquote powers that be, and I'm going to get into who these people are. I'm also going to get into a lot of the challenges that we face, just knowing that we're E1B1A or E1B1A as the quote unquote holy haplotype of the ancient Israelite nation. That's half the battle. I'm gonna really break down what we're up against in terms of what the world is being fed. Okay, because I've said this before, and I will continue to say it, my people. The Torah is our foundation, and as such, that's where everything starts. You can't know about the children of Israel without Torah. You can't. Let's just set the DNA aside for a second, right? In order to know about the children of Israel, you have to start in Torah. There's no way around that. Torah tells you exactly what the ancient Hebrew Israelites looked like, what color they were, what was going to happen to them, and why. Right? And it goes on. We're going to get into all of that. I have to go deep, man, with this. Because I read an article where a couple of years ago, our Igbo brothers and sisters supposedly took a DNA test. And the quote unquote powers that be came back and told them that by their DNA that they're not Jewish, which is a bunch of madness. And the reason why it came back that they're not Jewish is because the world has been fed that the false Jewish haplogroups, right? So anything that's not that, of course, they're going to try to tear it down or hide it, whatever the case may be. So we're going to get into all of that. And so, with me, I'm going to give a lot of context and some subtext to the context, because I have to be very thorough with this particular lesson. It's been long overdue, but today it's here. Okay, it's here. This is like the long overdue follow-up to my comprehensive E1B1A video, and we have a lot to unpack. We're going to get into the different haplogroups of the different Jewish groups that claim quote-unquote Jewish ancestry. We're going to get into the fact that Jew is not a race. We're going to get into the fact that how Zionism has laid the foundation for much of what we have in Israel today, long before 1948, when they were recognized as a state. The powers that be, or the Zionists, had the wheels turning since 1929, apparently. So this isn't anything that just kind of happened overnight. They've been planning this for a while, right? And you would think that, anyone can, Judaism, the religion, anyone can convert to that and practice that, right? But anyone can't convert to being a Hebrew Israelite by DNA or by genetics. Everyone can't do that. Okay, and again, like I said, just tighten up. It's going to be a doozy, but it's going to be worth every second. So we're gonna really get into a lot of the lies, blatant distortion of the truth, misinformation, you name it. We're going to address it all. Okay. So without further ado, y'all know how I do. So let's get it. Okay, like I said, dealing with the ancient Israelite nation, or the children of Israel, you have to start in Torah. Okay, there's no way around that. And so we're going to let Torah uncover who's who and where they came from, who the children of Israel are to the Most High. And we're going to end this segment out with what the children of Israel, the original children of Israel, look like. Okay, so from the very start, in Genesis 17:21, as you all can see, it says, "But my covenant will I establish with Isaac, which Sarah shall bear unto thee at this set time in the next year." So now the prophesying of Isaac being born, the Most High is letting it be known and establishing that his covenant is going to be through Isaac. Okay, not Ishmael. So there's a distinction, because Ishmael was Abraham's firstborn son, but the Most High is letting it distinctly be known that the covenant is going to be through Isaac, even though Sarah didn't really believe that she would have a child at her advanced age. And I think she was like 100. But of course, nothing is impossible for the Most High. He said it, and that's exactly what it was. So moving forward, we're going to continue to let the Torah speak. Now, in the next scripture and verse, 1 Chronicles 16:16-17, this establishes, it says, "Even of the covenant which he made with Abraham, and of his oath unto Isaac, and hath confirmed the same to Jacob for a law, and to Israel for an everlasting covenant." Now, why 1 Chronicles 16:16-17 is so important? Because not only does it establish or reestablishes that the Most High made his covenant through Isaac, it now specifically says that Jacob, all right, is going to go through Jacob. The chosen seed is Jacob, not Esau, Jacob. Okay, that's what 1 Chronicles 16:17 is establishing. Now, why is this scripture and verse so important moving forward in terms of the ancient Israelite nation and people who run around calling themselves Jews? It's important because it establishes that if you are a child of Israel, you have to come from the seed of Isaac and Jacob. Okay? If you are not from the seed or from the loins of Jacob, you are not a Hebrew Israelite. You are not a Jew. Okay? And that's just what it is. And before I'm not even going to deal with the DNA and genetics and all that. We're letting the Torah speak. The Torah is establishing who the Most High made his covenant with and who it has to go through. So that's important, because you have to go through Jacob. If you can't trace your seed back to Jacob, you're not a child of Israel, period, point blank. And with respect to the children of Israel, the Most High said in Deuteronomy 7:6, "For thou art a holy people unto the Lord thy God. The Lord thy God hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself above all people that are upon the face of the earth." Now, why that's important? Because the Most High establishes the children of Israel, the original Hebrew Israelites, as his chosen nation above all people that on the face of the earth. That's every single living, breathing soul. Now, why is this important in establishing who and who the ancient Hebrew Israelites were? It's important because with that comes a level of distinction. What I mean by that is that what separates the children of Israel from every nation on earth? How would we know the children of Israel are different than every nation on earth? Because you would have to know that with God, the Most High, there's going to be something that lets us know, not him, because obviously he knows, to let us know and what separates us from Esau or from any other nation on earth. This is why he told Rebekah he was going to separate the nations in her womb because of the distinction. Okay, and I submit to you all the fact that only Negroes and Negro influenced people throughout the world possesses the E1B1A Y DNA haplotype. That is a genetic fact. Okay. Now I don't know what I don't know how you get more special than that, or how much more distinct you can get than that. Okay, but that's what separates us. All right, now all these different races of people, these Ashkenazi Jews and these Sephardic Jews and all these different types of Jews that they label themselves. They're just titles. Genesis 10:3 tells us who the sons of Gomer. The sons of Gomer are Ashkenaz, Ripoth, and Togarmah, or however you pronounce that. All right, those are your Germans. Germans come up out of Ashkenaz, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe the Russians come up out of Gomer or Ripper. I'm not really sure, but I know the Germans come up out of Ashkenaz. Okay, and why this is important is because clearly the descendants of Gomer and Ashkenaz are not from the seed of Isaac and Jacob. So that would put a hole in their claim that they're original Hebrew Israelites, because clearly the Torah tells us that they came from Gomer and Ashkenaz. Okay, and when we get into the genetic aspect and the DNA aspect, I will show and prove that those people who are mostly migrated to the Caucasus Mountains in Europe, they're white people. All right, let's just put it out there, calling it what it is. I mean, so this is why I think this segment is so important, because the Torah is establishing who those people are and where they came from, and more importantly, right? We'll get into the DNA. So they can lie all they want to, but first of all, the Torah disputes that. We're not even talking DNA yet. The Torah disputes them, saying that they're Hebrew Israelites or that they're Jews. Okay, Genesis 10:6, and the sons of Ham were Cush, Mitzrayim, Put, and Canaan. And of course, Cush, as you all know or may not know, those Ethiopians come up out of there. Mitzrayim, those are your Egyptians, and Put, those are your Libyans, and Canaan, those are your Hamitic Africans. Now, back in the ancient Israelite days, the Hamitic Africans were known as Canaanites because that's where they dwelled. Israel was called Canaan back then. So back then they were known for the region that they dwelled. So they were called Canaanites. Okay, so Genesis 10:6 establishes the dark race, and this is haplogroup E. Like I said, I don't want to get too ahead of the segment, but this is haplogroup E. The sons of Ham. Okay, but the powers that be would have you believe that haplogroup E, or E1B1B, is so-called quote unquote Jewish, which is blatantly false. So is haplogroup J. We're gonna get into all that. I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but I'm just showing and proving, right, who the descendants of Ham are. So the fact that they're saying that Negroes came from Ham, that's not true. All right, and in the next segment we're gonna get into what the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary said, which is basically stating what Genesis 10:6 is saying, but it gave us a one caveat about Negroes. All right, and it said that Ham, the youngest son of Noah, quote unquote, the progenitor of the dark races, but not the Negroes. Okay, not the Negroes. Now that's important and that's key, because the Negroes would be us. The Negroes would be the ones who possess the E1B1A Y DNA haplotype, and the only race of people that possesses that Y DNA haplotype in the world. There's no one can dispute that. You know, people can say whatever out of their mouth. They can say whatever. They can print whatever. They have the power and money to do it. But the fact is, the Torah spells out who's who and where they came from. So the fact that Negroes did not come from Ham, because the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary gave us the caveat that Negroes did not come from Ham, it was the onus was on me to prove, now not just by Torah in Deuteronomy 17:68, that the children of Israel were cursed to go back into slavery by way of ships, but I had to show and prove that our DNA is different from those races that Genesis 10:6 and the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary told us that the sons of Ham came up out of. And by grace and mercy of the Most High, I was able to do that. I was able to separate the Negro race from all the other dark races by our DNA. Now, the world would have us believe that E1B1A is sub-Saharan and African, right? But then on the other hand, family tree DNA is saying that E1B1A was there at the start of the ancient Israelite nation. So there's so many lies and mistruths and falsehoods mixed up. You get confused. All right, but again, we're not done with the Torah. Okay, we're still dealing with the Torah and the Tanakh. Okay, what did the children of Israel look like? That's important and that's key. Okay, because all these different races, you know, talking about, you know, they're from the, you know, they're not satisfied with being converts. No, they're conveying to the world that they are from the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But Lamentations 4:8 says no, their visage is blacker than coal. Visage means face. Okay, now we get into the actual description of the color of what the ancient Hebrew Israelite nation looked like. Jeremiah 8:21 says, I am black. Okay, Jeremiah 14:2 says, they are black. Now follow me, my people. I'm establishing by Torah and by Tanakh what the ancient Hebrew Israelite nation looked like, who they are, who they were, what happened to them, and more importantly, what they look like. Okay, Job 30:30 says, my skin is black upon me. And let's set aside the fact that all these new different versions of the Bible has tried to take the word black out, or tried to change the word, change it up, whatever the case may be. It's all by design to keep our people ignorant and confused. Okay, Song of Solomon 1:5 says, I am black, but comely. Song of Solomon 1:6 says, look not upon me, because I am black. Okay. And finally, Yeshua HaMashiach, Revelation 1:15 says, and his feet was like unto fine brass, as it were burned in a furnace. That's how dark Yeshua HaMashiach was. And I had I hope you guys can see that. I have a picture of what brass would look like if it was burnt in a furnace. Okay, and then I put down the bottom. So who the hell is this? You know, supposedly that's Caesar, that false Roman image of Christ is supposedly of Caesar Borgia. You know, you can Google him. I'm not going to really get into that in this lesson, because I know it's going to be long enough as it is. But Google, for those of you who are new or just coming into the truth, Google Caesar Borgia. That's who that false Roman image of Christ is a picture of, not the actual Christ, but you. Man, you wouldn't believe how many people actually really think that that's what Yeshua HaMashiach looks like. Even to this day, even with all of our knowledge and technology and access to information, many of our people, young and old, still really believe that that is a picture of Jesus, which is kind of disturbing, you know, on so many levels, right? But before we get into the next segment, I wanted to establish by Torah who the children of Israel are or were to the Most High, and more importantly, what they look like before we even get into the DNA and the genetics, because that's a whole nother thing. Because those races claiming that they're Israelites, they can't prove they're Israelites by Torah. And there's no way you can claim that you're an Israelite if your history, if your prophet, if you don't, if your history doesn't line up with prophecy and Torah in terms of what was supposed to happen to the children of Israel. So it's not about just believing in the curses, right? You can believe in the curses, but when you bring the genetics into that, that's pretty formidable. So people can say whatever. Jacob was one man. Okay, Jacob didn't have no haplogroup J and haplogroup, all these different haplogroups he's given it. No, Jacob was one man. And all 12 of his sons, the 12 tribes of Israel, came from that one man. So they all have variations of his Y DNA haplotype, which I established as E1B1A, because the children of Israel in Deuteronomy 18:68 were cursed to go back into slavery by way of ships. Those were the Negroes. Remember? Those were the Negroes. The Negroes that Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary said did not come from Ham. So they didn't come from Ham. They definitely didn't come from Japhet. They came from Shem. That means the Negroes are Shemitic. And not only are they Shemitic, but the Negroes, I've shown and proven, are the lost children of Israel and possesses the Y DNA haplotype of E1B1A. And with respect to the last segment, with the Torah describing the children of Israel and what they look like, supposedly in 1952, this then president of Egypt, Gamal Abdel Nasser, said that when he was asked about peace in the Middle East, he said that, quote, "The Jews will never be able to live here in peace because they left hair black but came back white." Now, whether you believe that to be literal, or whether you some might believe that that's propaganda, whatever the case may be, the bottom line is he wasn't lying. That scripture, that quote is truthful. In the last segment, verified that, of what they look like, even going as far as to describe Yeshua HaMashiach the same way the children of Israel were described with those various scriptures and verses in the prior segment. He said they left black and came back white, in which that's true. I mean, historically, however you want to look at it, biblically, realistically, the statement is true. Whether you believe this president of Egypt, which ironically, for him to make that statement was real ironic. I mean, because the original Egyptians looked nothing like him, but that's a whole nother story for another time, right? But let's deal with the statement and what Torah has shown and proved to us, in terms of what the children of Israel look like. So just by that and this particular statement made by this then president of Egypt, and you see the visual of what the Jews that inhabit Israel today, what they look like. They're Jewish, right? And my thing is, hey, as far as being a converted Jew to Judaism, hey, that's fine. But relay that to the world. Don't take it so far to just go as far as to say that you're actually the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because that's not true. You could never prove that, right? I mean, so again, apparently just being a convert is not good enough. They have the world believing that they are the quote unquote chosen people of God, right? And I don't know if there's a hidden agenda with that in terms of the region, the land, whatever the case may be. But then you have another prominent person, it's Mr. Benjamin Friedman. He said, "The Jews, I call them Jews to you because they are known as Jews. I don't call them Jews, though. I refer to them as so-called Jews because I know what they are. If Jesus was a Jew, there isn't a Jew in the world today. And if those people are Jews, certainly our Lord and Savior was not white, and I can prove that." Now, what happened? The Eastern European Jews, who form 92% of the world's population of those people who call themselves Jews, were originally Khazars. They were a warlike tribe or warlike people that lived deep in the heart of Asia. And they were so warlike that even the Asiatics drove them out of Asia and into Eastern Europe. So, this isn't a type of, this isn't anything new. I mean, all throughout history, people know the truth. But yet, there's a lot of people in so-called powers that be are still perpetuating the big lie. I guess they counted on people just remaining ignorant to DNA and how DNA works and, and why DNA haplotypes and things of that nature, right? But it's not like that anymore. People are waking up, specifically our people, waking up. The Most High is raising us up and bringing this stuff forth. So, this isn't anything new, right? And we're not, I'm not being cynical or being mean or disrespectful. I'm literally giving you a lesson on history. We're dealing with data. We're dealing with Torah. And in a few segments coming up, we're going to deal with, genetics, more so, right? Like I said, there's so much more to unpack, and we're going to get through it all. So let's go on to the next segment. Okay, now that I've let the Torah establish for us who the children of Israel are, and how the Most High wanted them to be special or distinct from all nations, and more importantly, what they looked like. Okay, now that we have that established, and who the children of Ashkenaz and Gomer, right? Those are Europeans, my people. They came up out of Japhet. I think it's important now to establish that, if for nothing else, just as a statement of fact, that the term Jew is not a race. Okay, people have kind of weaponized that word in a sense. They throw stuff around like, anti-Semitic and things of that nature, which, like I said, for the average novice, they don't know that in order for you to be anti-Semitic towards the people that you're being accused of being anti-Semitic against have to be Semitic. And, genetically and biblically and geographically, the occupants that occupy Israel today are not a Semitic people. Okay, I personally think the term is thrown around loosely as a way to kind of weaponize. They don't want to be judged or they don't want to be scrutinized, right? But Jew is not a race. So this meme right here that you're looking at, this isn't my meme, but I kind of wanted to, kind of quasi address some of the things, in this meme, because I think it's important. And it says the idea of race itself and actual divisions of persons into groups based on selected hereditary features are social constructs. Now, I believe that to be true and untrue. Okay, there are certain aspects of us as being black people per se that are socially constructed. Because of the complexion of our skin, because of what we look like, many of us are discriminated against. Many people that look like us are poor or not as economically independent as a lot of other races, whatever the case may be. So some of that is true, but in terms of us being born as Negroes and what we look like, that's not a social construct. That's a birth. That's birth. That's biological, even, right? That's hereditary. There's nothing socially constructive about being born black, right? It says Jews sprang from the Mediterranean subdivision of the Caucasoid race. Yes, very true, right there. Over the course of centuries, Jews have developed a multitude of different physical characteristics because of their fusion with other racial blends wherever they lived. Again, that's some truth mixed with some, I won't say falsehood per se, but it's some truth in there. But let me clarify that. The Jews that they're speaking about, or the people that claim to be Jews, like this, the Sephardic Jews, the Ashkenazi Jews, all these different groups of people that identify as a quote unquote Jew, they're speaking about those people. Those people, those groups of people are not from the seed of Isaac and Jacob, right? However, the seeds of Isaac and Jacob, the actual seed that came from the loins of Jacob, that's true that the actual seed of Jacob did have mixed with a multitude of people, because we were scattered all over the world. So that part is true. But from their perspective, they're talking about all these groups of individuals that identify as Jew. Their characteristics have nothing to do. It doesn't matter what their characteristics are. They aren't from the seed of Jacob. So that's kind of misleading, if you all follow me, right? All right, and it says there's no distinguishing racial, physical feature common only to Jews. Again, they're referring to those groups that identify as Jews or Jewish, not the seed of Isaac and Jacob. Because if you're a Negro, I don't care if you're dark, if you're brown, if you're light, if you're a Negro, especially if you're a Negro that possesses the E1B1AY DNA haplotype, you're going to have some distinguishable features. Remember, for those of you who may or may not know, and I said a long time ago, I have a gift. I can pick out a Hamite from a Negro. Our features are just different. So we do have different physical characteristics. You can put an African or a Canaanite, as they were called back then, next to one of us, and I could pick us out easily, because even though you take away the color of our skin, we have different characteristics. It's clearly distinct from one another. So that's not true that there's no racial physical feature common only to Jews, only to Jews. That's not really true. It says anyone can become a Jew. Very true. But that's Judaism and the religion of Judaism. Okay, and it says members of every race, creed, and color in the world have done so at one time or another. And again, that's true. But converting to the religion of Judaism, again, it's not the same as being a genetic Hebrew Israelite. You don't have to convert to what you are. And this is why the Igbos rejected the Jewish agencies, said that they the right to return, because a lot of the Igbos want to go back. They want to return to Israel, but they're saying, well, you have to convert. And the Igbos, our brothers, push back like, no, we're not converting to what we are. We don't have to convert, because they're not feeling Judaism, the religion. All right, that religion is man-made. Being a Hebrew Israelite is a lifestyle. It's a way of life. The Most High gave the children of Israel laws, statutes, and commandments, not religion. Right? There's a difference. All right, and then lastly it says, as early as Abraham, the Jews have admitted others into the fold. A mixed multitude of many non-Jews joined the Exodus. And again, they quoted the wrong scripture and verse, because that's not the precept for that. They're talking about the sojourners, right? I believe it's Exodus 12:48. And if those that want to sojourn with the children of Israel and take on the law, statutes, and commandments given to the children of Israel, the Most High will see them as one that is homeborn. Right? So yeah, that's that mixed multitude. But again, being a sojourner still does not make you a genetic Hebrew Israelite. Yes, the Most High will look at you as the same. That's true. All right. But again, it appears that a lot of people, they don't want to be sojourners. They don't want to stand with the children of Israel. It's like they want to steal the identity of the children of Israel. And I mean, it's like, man, that's not enough. If you look at history, if you go back, the Holy Land has had so many invaders, man, so many uninvited invaders. That's why I don't get excited when they find bones over there and they do these so-called DNA tests and comes back so-and-so, whatever. How many different races of people invaded Israel, probably lived and died in Israel. Like I said before in one of my segments a long time ago, they're getting the DNA of robbers, of stealers, of invaders, right? That's what they're getting the DNA of, So I'm not impressed. That's why you have to know the history. You have to know the starting with Torah. That's where it all starts. And when I set out to prove who we were as a people, not just biblically, but genetically, and how and lining them both up. Again, that's indisputable. But I wanted to address this meme here because it had some things in there that's true and some things not so much. On to the next segment. So now up to this point in the lesson, where we've let the Torah establish who the groups of people that refer to themselves as Ashkenazi and the children of Gomer and Magog, and we established that. Okay, so so we established that they're not from the seed of Isaac and Jacob. So and I believe that this is where the Jewish agency, and we'll get into that a little later, made it to where you have to establish your quote-unquote Jewishness through the mother, because they know they could not establish it through the father. Okay, so yeah, that was deliberate, and they know that. So moving right along, it says the real Jewish homeland, Khazaria, in the Caucasus. We will deal with that in the next segment, where there was a mass conversion to Judaism in the 8th century. Because these people with no connection to ancient Israel moved up into Eastern and Western Europe and then headed for the U.S. and Israel to become today's Jewish population, or the Jewish quote-unquote state. And we know that officially took place in 1948, not to get too far ahead, but I'm going to deal with that in the segment coming up, in terms of then President Harry Truman being one of the first world leaders to recognize Israel as a Jewish state. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all, but I've heard rumors that supposedly there was some type of big $2 or $3 million bribe from certain members of the Zionist movement offered to then President Truman to recognize Israel as a state. Because remember, the whole Zionist movement, they had the wheels turning since like 1924 in terms of really trying to claim Israel. So they've been working for a long time. All right, but the reality is, as we continue on in the lesson, is that clearly the groups of people that refer to themselves or identify as Jews did not originate in the Holy Land. In other words, they came from a lot of different places, all over Europe, right? And like I said, in the last segment, this isn't anything new or groundbreaking. There was a book called The 13th Tribe by Arthur Kessler, who's a prominent Jewish writer, and that book actually was on Israel's bestsellers list for like a lot of weeks, like 14, 15 weeks, whatever the case may be. And he says the same thing. I think for men like him, and I applaud him for telling the truth, but I think they're saying that, okay, listen, okay, we recognize and we know that we're not from the seed of Isaac and Jacob, but basically we're here. We have a right to be here. I think that's pretty much their position. Now I'm not here to argue for or against. I mean, because you all know, as far as the children of Israel, what our deal is. We have to concentrate, on getting back to our covenant. The Most High will handle everything else, because clearly we're still in the Yeshua HaMashiach prophesied this. We're still in the day of the Gentile. They're still in control. They're still in charge. We have no power. Okay, and I'm gonna really get into that in a couple of segments in terms of who has the power and what they've been doing with that power. Okay, so yeah, I mean that's what it is. They say they're not. They concede that they're not from the seed of Isaac and Jacob, but the fact is that they're there now, and they have a right to be there, and they're operating under that premise. The whole Israel and Palestine thing. I mean, it's all Judea. It's all Israel. I'm just going to say that, right? So, they're both fighting for a land and a region that doesn't belong to either one of them. We're talking historically and biblically, okay? And that's just the harsh reality. That's just the truth, Okay, I don't care how you slice, how you look at it. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to be cynical. My job is to teach, you know, and I gotta keep it real. Bottom line. It says here on January 27th, 1883, this Mr. Joseph Ernest Renan wrote a lecture called Judaism as a Race and as Religion. This is the earliest public theory that the Ashkenazi Jews descend from the Turkic Asian Khazars. Joseph Ernest Renan was also a huge racial theorist and a racist. So here's a man that was clearly, racist. He had no fighting, in the game, or no, whatever the case may be. So, but he told the truth. This is back in 1883. Okay, so again, and I use this to symbolize, throughout history, that there are people that they know the truth, man, right? But they're still operating on the premise of the lie, and that's the thing that's really perplexing. A lot of people know the truth. They know, a lot of people, I won't say a lot of people, but some people know who the true children of Israel are, but they'll never admit to it. They'll never cop to it. All right, because their job is to kind of keep the lost. So they'll never cop to it. Remember, Psalm 83:4 comes, let us stop them from being a nation, that the name of Israel be no longer in remembrance. Yeah, remember that? Well, that's still very prominent and still very prevalent right now today, in 2021. Nothing changes. They'll do whatever they have to do to keep us in the blind, to keep the truth hidden, to keep the confused, the ignorant. That's why it behooves each and every one of you listening to the sound of my voice. Y'all know, Dr. Ephraim, I love y'all. I'm not going to tell y'all nothing wrong. Anything I say out my mouth, I believe wholeheartedly. And like I said before, and if you don't, you don't have to take it on face value. You could, do your own research. But I'm doing it for you, so all you have to do is just press play. But anyway, we're going to move on to the next segment. The Caucasus Mountains. First time I heard that is back in the days of my teachings and lessons as a 5%er, a nation of gods and earths, right? So even if you look at that and you look at, the reality of where a lot of the converted Jews came from and where they originated, we weren't far off. Even the fact of calling a black man Asiatic, well, that's that whole haplogroup DE thing that I still have yet to do. So it's all tied in. The expression is so true, man. Where there's smoke, there's fire. Well, let's get into this. The Caucasus, or the Caucasus Mountains. It says the Caucasus is a region at the border of Europe and Asia, situated between the Black and the Caspian Seas. It is home to the Caucasus Mountains, which contain Europe's highest mountain, Mount Elbrus, 5,642 meters. Politically, the Caucasus region is separated between northern and southern parts. The southern parts consist of independent sovereign states, and the northern parts are under the jurisdiction of the Russian Federation. The region is known for its linguistic diversity. Aside from Indo-European and Turkic languages, the Kartvelian, Northwest Caucasian, and Northeast Caucasian families are indigenous to the area. All right? So there we go. We're setting the tone for where most of the European Jews originated. And up to and including the early 19th century, the Southern Caucasus and a part of the Northern Caucasus all formed part of the Persian Empire. In 1813 and 1828, by the Treaty of Gulistan and the Treaty of Tamarkani, respectively, the Persians were forced to irrevocably cede, sorry about that, the Southern Caucasus and Dagestan to Imperial Russia. Russia conquered and annexed the rest of the Northern Caucasus in the course of the 19th century in the Caucasian Wars, 1817 through 1864. In the aftermath of the war, an ethnic cleansing Caucasians was performed by Russia, in which the indigenous peoples of this region, mostly Caucasians, were expelled from their homeland and forced to move primarily to the Ottoman Empire, and to a lesser extent the Qajar Persia. The region was unified as a single political entity twice during the Russian Civil War, and from 9 April 1918 to 26 May 1918, and under the Soviet rule from 12 March 1922 to December 1st, 1936. In the 1940s, around 480,000 Chechens and Ingish, 120,000 Balkars, Karachi's, Masheshkin Turks, and 200,000 Kurds and Caucasus Germans were deported en masse to Central Asia and Siberia. About a quarter of them died. Following the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Armenia became independent nations. The Caucasus region has been subject to various territorial disputes since the collapse of the Soviet Union, leading to the Nagorno-Karabakh War, 1988 through 1994. Okay, a couple of different wars there. All right. And we're going to move right along. All right. And moving right along, it says, with respect to demographics, the region of the Caucasus, people of the Caucasus, has many different languages and language families. They said at the time there were more than 50 ethnic groups living in the region. No fewer than 3 language families are unique to the area, but also Indo-European languages such as Armenian and Ossetic, and Turkic languages such as Azerbaijani and Kabasha-Bakar are spoken in the area. Russian is used as a common language. Today, the peoples of the northern and southern Caucasus tend to be either Eastern Orthodox Christians, Oriental Orthodox Christians, or Sunni Muslims. Shia Islam has had many adherents historically in Azerbaijan, located in the eastern part of the region. So now we've established. We let the Torah tell us who the groups of people were, where they came from, what line they came up out of. Right? We've established that. We've established that the groups that identify as Jews today, all the different types from the Sephardic to the Ashkenazi to, all the different groups of people are not from the biblical Hebrew Israelites. We've established that. We've established who the children of Israel are, what was going to happen to them, and what they look like, more importantly. All right, so we have all of that established. So now we're getting to the meat and the crux of the lesson. In the next segment, we're going to deal with all of that being said. How did Israel get to be where it is today? And the people that's in control, that control the narrative of who's Israel or who's not, how did that get to be? For many of you who've heard the term Zionism or Zionist and just not really sure on what it is, I think it's important to establish exactly what Zionism is, and how then President Truman was connected to those in the Zionist movement to help establish Israel as a state. Now, Zionism, and also once we go over this, you will probably understand a little better the whole conflict between Israel and Palestine. Okay. Now, Zionism is both an ideology and nationalist movement among the Jewish people that espouses the reestablishment of and support for a Jewish state in the territory defined as the historic land of Israel, roughly corresponding to Canaan, the Holy Land, or the region of Palestine. Modern Zionism emerged in the late 19th century in Central and Eastern Europe as a national revival movement, both in reaction to newer waves of anti-Semitism and as a response to Haskalah, or Jewish Enlightenment. Soon after this, most leaders of the movement associated the main goal with creating the desired state in Palestine, then an area controlled by the Ottoman Empire. Until 1948, the primary goals of Zionism were the reestablishment of Jewish sovereignty in the land of Israel and gathering of the exiles, the liberation of Jews from the anti-Semitic discrimination and persecution that they experienced during the diaspora since the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948. Zionism continues primarily to advocate on behalf of Israel and to address threats to its continued existence and security. A religious variety of Zionism supports Jews upholding their Jewish identity, defined as adherence to religious Judaism, opposes the assimilation of Jews into other societies, and has advocated the return of Jews to Israel as a means for Jews to be a majority nation in their own state. A variety of Zionism called cultural Zionism, founded and represented most prominently by Ahad, fostered a secular vision of a Jewish spiritual center in Israel. Unlike Herzl, the founder of political Zionism, Ahad strived for Israel to be a Jewish state and not merely a state of Jews. Advocates of Zionism view it as a nationalist liberation movement for the reparation of a persecuted people residing as minorities in a variety of nations to their ancestral homeland. Critics of Zionism view it as a colonialist, racist, and exceptionalist ideology that led advocates to violence during mandatory Palestine, followed by the exodus of Palestinians and the subsequent denial of their right to return to land and property lost during the 1948 and 1967 wars. So yes, there are Israelis in Israel that are anti-Zionism, right? So there you go. So now you have a better understanding of exactly what Zionism is. And of course, the founder is Theodor Herzl. He's considered the founder of the modern Zionist movement. Okay, he envisioned the founding of a future independent Jewish state during the 20th century. So that's your man right there. And the next segment is going to deal with President Harry Truman in 1948. President Harry S. Truman was actually known in some circles as the father of Israel, right? Because the whole focal point of where we are today, and that's with everything included, conflict, everything started with this man and being one of the first world leaders to recognize Israel as a state. I mean, the thing is, with no regard for whether or not they had, biblical or even legal ties to the land, right? I mean, it's just so much involved. I'm not going to go on a tangent, but let's get into the to this whole President Truman thing and recognizing Israel and how that all came about. All right, because this is what set a lot of the stuff in motion today. All right, in 1917, the Balfour Declaration transferred rule of the Middle Eastern region known as Palestine to the British Empire as a temporary national home for Jewish people. Between 1917 and 1948, Palestine was inhabited by Jewish immigrants who supported the idea of Zionism, the right of the Jewish people to return to the Holy Land, and Arabic-speaking Muslims and Christians who had occupied the land for many centuries. Tensions began to form between the Arab Palestinians and the Jewish immigrants as both groups tried to take claim over the same portions of religiously significant land. In 1948, the Balfour Declaration was scheduled to expire, and Great Britain would no longer rule Palestine. The question over what to do with the tumultuous country was turned over to the United Nations, who would eventually decide to create the new country of Israel, specifically as a promised homeland for Jewish people. The new country was to be located across the various holy locations in which many events of the Old Testament occurred and, according to the Bible, was promised to the Jewish people by God. U.S. President Harry Truman was the first world leader to officially recognize Israel as a legitimate Jewish state on May 14, 1948. only 11 minutes after its creation. Wow. His decision came after much discussion and advice from the White House staff, who had differing viewpoints. Some advisors felt that creating a Jewish state was the only proper response to the Holocaust and would benefit American interests. Others took the opposite view, though, concerned about that the creation of a Jewish state would create more conflict in an already tumultuous region. The latter couldn't be more true and prophetic, and there's so much wrong with everything I just read, because they're making the statements. This Balfour Declaration is making a statement on the assumption that these European Jews are the Jews of the Bible, not understanding or realizing that Judaism is their religion. Okay, Jew is not a race. Jew is not a people, and it's definitely not those people. So there's a whole lot wrong with the Balfour Declaration, but that's what set everything in motion that we have right up until this day, my people. And then President Harry Truman played a significant role in that. So when you all hear me mention quote unquote the powers that be, what you're looking at is basically the majority of the powers that be, the Jewish Agency for Israel. And just so it won't be a surprise, let me get it out there right now that the Zionists are behind the Jewish Agency for Israel. Okay? So, that being said, Jewish Agency for Israel, they have all the power. They get to determine basically who is Jewish and who is not. They get to control the narrative. Okay, they're behind this whole as we move toward the genetic DNA phase of the presentation. Okay, this is the face that you never really see. Many of you probably have never even heard of them. But this is the power behind the curtain, if you will. Okay, they make the rules. They set the rules. They are in total control right now. Okay, when all those Ethiopians came, I think it was Operation Solomon back in 1991, under the so-called right of return. It's just, without going on a tangent, it's just the whole spill, man. It's just so many holes. It's just so many things wrong with the whole movement. Just going way back to 1948. I know it was a long time ago, but a lot of things that Balfour council set in motion, a lot of things, man, that are just that were not good. They're just bad, right? So when I mentioned that, in the beginning, in my kind of vocal thesis, that I was going to address the fact that a lot of our Igbos took a DNA test, and they tried to tell them that they weren't Jewish by their DNA, which, I'm pretty sure they were angry and upset, and rightfully so. But if they know who and what they're dealing with, they wouldn't have even taken the test, because basically, if you take a test from any of those type of organizations like the Jewish Agency for Israel, they don't recognize E1B1A as the haplotype for the children of Israel. They don't. They control the narrative. They have the world thinking that haplogroup J1 is a Kohanim gene, haplogroup E1B1B is Jewish, and that's the narrative. So that's why they came back and said that. So, that's the challenge for us as a people, or even the Negroes or the Bantus who recognize who we are, because not all Bantus recognize us, either. But then again, by the same token, not all African Americans or all Negroes recognize who we are either. So that's not surprising there. But this is why, my people, this is the challenge we have. See, from my perspective, I can take Torah, because that's where it starts with the children of Israel. I can take Torah and prophecy and line it up with the lives of us and our ancestors, right? A lot of the Jewish groups can't do that. Their lives does not mirror prophecy, not at all, right? And a lot of them know this, but yet again, like I said, they still perpetuate the lie. And this Jewish agency, man, they're in total control right now. You know, they get to determine who's Jewish and who's not. You know, they get to kick people out of Israel, or not allow them to even come. They get to treat blacks like second-class citizens still. And I mean, Yeshua HaMashiach said it best. I mean, this is definitely the day and time of the Gentile, because that's clearly what they are. They are not from the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So yes, the powers that be right now that are in control in Israel, they are Gentiles, straight up and down. I mean, from a historical perspective, from a biblical perspective, from a genetic perspective. Okay, they're Gentiles, but that's neither here nor there, because they make the rules. They're in control, and we're not. So you know, my thing is, and I say this all the time. You know, it's not what you know or what you think you know, but what you can prove. And I have no doubt that I can prove what I'm saying. But if the powers that be have it so, you know, that they have the world believing that, you know, this particular haplogroup are Jews, or this particular haplogroup are Kohanim or Levites, I mean, that's a lot to overcome. I don't have millions and millions of dollars, right? So only thing I can do is just come with these lessons and come with the truth. But moving forward, you know, going on to the next segment, you know, this Jewish Agency for Israel, they're in the driver's seat. Okay, they're the driving force behind. You know, I'm pretty sure a lot of them know the truth. They want to keep it hidden. You know, back in the day we used to call that the 10%. You know, the 85ers are the dumb, deaf, and blind. The 10% the ones that know the truth and keep it hidden. You know, from the 85, and of course the 5% of the poor righteous teachers. You know, I mean, you can look at that and conceptually, and that's kind of how it is right now. You know, I mean, I'm far removed from being a 5%er, but conceptually that still really applies if you think about it, because there's a percentage of people that want to keep the truth hidden from the majority of us. You know, and that's true. So anyway, we're moving into the DNA phase, so let's get it. So now, my brothers, sisters, and sojourners, we're getting to the meat of this lesson. Now we're moving into the genetic DNA phase of this whole thing. Okay, I mentioned earlier about you know, the Igbos who took a DNA test to prove, quote unquote, their heritage, basically, and this Messianic Jew group out of Arizona came back and said that they weren't, quote unquote, real Jews. And of course, the Igbos were upset. You know, they were perplexed, irate, you know, the whole nine, you name it. And like I said, as they should have been. However, and we're going to get into the story, some of it in a minute, but I want you all to understand this, and to my Igbo brothers and sisters, and let's be clear, the majority, a lot of us that were on that were transported via the transatlantic slave trade, our ancestors rather, a lot of them came from the Igbo tribe. Okay, let me be clear. The Igbos, specifically the Biafrans, if many of you are familiar with that, they are Shemitic without a shadow of a doubt. See, because what these people don't understand is that no missionary came into Africa and taught Judaism. All right, if you look at our history, our verbal history, that's been passed down and passed down. Look at a lot of the languages, the similarities in the languages. I mean, we can go on and on. No one came and taught black people that in Africa. So I said that to say what? So where did they get that from then? Okay, they didn't just pull it out of the air. The problem is what we're doing now, what I'm seeing, especially like with the Igbo and the Limba. We're going to talk about them in a little bit as well. And a lot of these Hebrew brothers and sisters out of Africa, what they're doing is they're seeking validation from a people who has no reason to validate them. They're seeking validation from a people who stole our identity in the first place. Why do you think they would validate who we really are when they've kept it hidden, try to keep it hidden, and keep us in the dark for hundreds of years? Why do you think all of a sudden they would just get want to do the right thing? We're kind of barking up the wrong tree, right? But let's get into the a little bit of the story here, right? And then we can just kind of continue to move on. It says, okay, in this article, it says, who is a Jew? According to a Jewish Messianic group from America, you can find out for only $300 with a private DNA test. And according to this test, the Jewish genetic family does not include Igbo people of Nigeria, a tribe of 30 million who have claimed a connection to Judaism for hundreds of years. Now let me correct that right there. See that off top, that's wrong. We don't claim no connection to Judaism. Judaism is a religion. Let's be clear. Okay? We claim connections to who we are by nature, by our nationality. Our people descended from Northeast Africa and Israel. This is a genetic fact. No, we don't claim no connection to Judaism. That's wrong. So I had to say that real quick. And a move that has garnered condemnation and anger from Nigerian Jews and international scholars. Jewish Voice Ministries, a Messianic group from Arizona, announced this week that the Igbo are not genetically Jewish based on their private DNA tests. And in parentheses, it says Messianic Judaism, whose adherents consider Jesus to be the Jewish Messiah, is regarded by Israel and Jewish organizations as a form of Christianity. Jewish Voice Ministries said they traveled to Nigeria to investigate claims that the Igbo people are descendants of ancient Israelites. Some Igbo believe that the term Igbo is a bastardization or a bastardized version of the word Hebrew and point to many cultural similarities between Igbo traditions and Judaism. And again, like I just said a minute ago, what these people have to understand is that no missionary came into Africa and taught any African anything about Judaism. Like, I can promise you that. They taught them Christianity, but I guarantee you no missionary came into Africa and taught them the cultural doings of the people of Israel. I guarantee you that. Right? So then again, so it begs the question, how did they learn these things? Right? How do they know it? Right? So moving right along. It said the purpose of the test was to provide them with testing in the pursuit of truth in terms of historical identity, said a spokesman for Jewish Voice Ministries. Quote, the DNA did not support their claim to be an ancient people of Israel, but we will consider them our brothers through common faith in the Messiah, Yeshua. Oh, wow. You will consider them, huh? I mean, just wow, man. Remy Yona, a Nigerian lawyer and professor, and my apologies if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly, sir, strongly denounced the test. Iona is Igbo and a member of the approximately 10,000 Igbos who follow what he calls rabbinical Judaism. Iona, a Times of Israel blogger, recently graduated from Florida International University with a master's in religious studies and will be an adjunct professor there in the fall. There is no test that can prove Jewishness, said Iona. The culture has to point in that direction, and maybe a test can confirm what the culture is already saying. Right. The Igbos are connecting to Judaism, have no connection to these DNA tests, and we oppose this, he added. And let me interject real quick. No, we shouldn't oppose it. What it is that, and I'm going to get into this in the next segment more in depth, but what the problem that we're facing, the problem and the uphill climb that we face is that the world does not recognize our Y DNA haplotype as Jewish. That's the problem. Because we're not in control, because we don't control the narrative, the world does not, the E1B1A, which the children of Israel are possess, is not recognized, at least not wholly, as a quote unquote Jewish haplogroup. It just isn't. Now, family tree DNA, which has the biggest DNA database in the world, they actually mentioned that E1B1A was there at the start of the ancient Israelite nation, even though they tried to downplay it, right, and try to say, oh, maybe we was in the mixed multitude. But the fact is, they put us there. They put our DNA there at the start of the ancient Israelite nation. So they give us a little truth, and they put some other stuff on it. They give us a little bit, they try to downplay it, but the cat was out of the bag, and I'm gonna address that as well. But that's the problem that we face, my people. We can't get upset when you know the nature of something or someone, right? How can you get upset? Remember, Psalms 83:4. They said, "Come, let us cut them off from being a nation." Okay, there's more than one group of people or nation of people involved with this whole thing. They're all in cahoots. The majority of them know who the true children of Israel are. Their job is to keep it hidden from you. They're not going to all of a sudden say, okay, well, you know what, you're right. You guys are Hebrews, man, but we just wanted to keep it from you, and so all these years, so now we're going to do the right thing. No, don't hold your breath, man. You're seeking. I mean, and that's what I'm seeing. My people, the Igbos, more so, the Yorubas for the most part, they don't really fool with it like that, but there's a small percentage of us still in Yoruba that's like, listen, this is who we are, this is our identity, whatever the case may be. Remember the B'nai Ephraim, right? The children of Ephraim, when we fled into Yoruba from northern Africa. Remember that, right? So and so now basically you have all these converted Jews going into Africa, bringing Judaism to our people who, listen, man, we're not Jews in terms of, we're Hebrew Israelite, but we don't have to convert to what we are, what we were born. We are the only people that somehow they have a problem with having a nation. And I don't get that, right? We are the only people that they seem to have a problem attaching to our legitimate and our rightful nation. Okay, we don't have to convert to Israelite or being a Hebrew Israelite. That's what we are by birth, by genetics, by DNA, and I can prove it from the Torah, and I can prove it by our blood. And I'm going to get into that too, more so as we continue along the DNA aspect, of the lesson. Moving along, Yonah added that he views the Jewish Voice Ministry's attempt to connect with the redeemed Israel community of Nigeria as thinly veiled proselytizing. He also faulted the organization's testing methodology for being faulty and incomplete. He said the sample test group was too small given the vast population of Igbo, and in parts of Nigeria that are not majority Igbo. The Jewish Voices Ministry spokesman refused to comment on the organization's testing methodology or other issues. I'd like to do a DNA test myself of those people from Jewish Voice Ministries who are coming to Nigeria. I know that's right, to determine if they're really Jewish, said Yonah. And it says the Jewish Voice Ministry also provides medical care and services to international communities as part of its social outreach. In March, the head of Jewish Voice, Jonathan Burnett, told the Forward that the organization will base their medical outreach to Nigeria on the results of the tests. It says, we go to areas with a Jewish population or people who are historically tied to the Jewish people to provide aid, Burnett told the Forward. The results of the DNA testing would determine what degree of service we provide moving forward. And it says, despite his dismissal of the Jewish Voices test, Yonah still believes that DNA tests can hold important information, but they should be done on a personal basis for people who are interested in learning more about their history, not by an outside group with a vested agenda. There we go. Yonah did a private DNA test himself a few months ago and found that he has Western Semitic roots which trace to the Red Sea region, which he believes proves his genetic ties to Judaism. And again, that's incorrectly stated. I know my ancestors were at Mount Sinai, but maybe some of the Igbos don't have that information. Professor Tudor Parfit, a world-renowned scholar who was one of the first people to utilize DNA testing to hypothesize about Jewish migration into Africa, called the Jewish Voice Ministries test irresponsible. Parfit, the head of Jewish studies at Florida International University, where Iona studies, gained recognition for his work in determining via DNA that the Limba tribe in Zimbabwe and South Africa migrated from the Middle East. And this was widely accepted as proof for the tribe's oral tradition of being Jewish. He started his research into the subject on a trip to Israel in 1998, when he walked along the beach in Tel Aviv and asked Israelis who self-identified as Kohanim, or part of the priestly class, to have their cheek swab so Parfit could map their DNA. He was one of the scientists who worked to identify the Kohen model haplotype, a specific DNA marking unique to descendants of Aaron, was found in 52% of Kohanim on the Tel Aviv promenade. Let me stop there briefly. And again, I mean, they're getting swabs from converts, man. These testing these people that live in Israel today means absolutely nothing in determining who the ancient Hebrew Israelites were, who are the true children of Israel. And I'm not being cynical, okay? I'm being realistic. Swabbing people that live in Israel or even Palestine is giving you a bunch of data that means nothing with respect to identifying who the ancient Hebrew Israelites are today. Where are they? Okay? I guarantee you with almost 120% certainty that the majority of the ancient Israelites, descendants of the ancient Israelites, do not live in Israel or Palestine today. Okay? So these tests are just, I mean, I'm not going to say it's foolish, but we're not getting the correct data. Okay, we're getting data from people that were converts. They moved to Israel. I mean, what sense does that make, to swab the cheeks of people who are not from the land? They're not from there. So whatever data you get from them, I mean, it's kind of moot until you recognize, right, who the descendants of the ancient Hebrew Israelites are today. All of these tests are senseless. Okay? It's senseless. You got all these different groups, claiming Jewishness, whatever, Sephardic and Ashkenazi and Yemen and all these different groups claiming quote unquote Jewishness. Okay? But they lack the Y DNA haplotype of Jacob. See, that's what people don't understand. Like I said, we're going to get into the DNA phase in the next segment. I don't want to, put the cart before the horse, but that's what people don't understand. See, that's where the ignorance comes in at. And I don't mean ignorant in a negative sense. I mean ignorance from the fact that people just don't understand how DNA works. Okay, Jacob was one man. How you know all these different groups are not Hebrew Israelites by genetics is because they don't possess the Y DNA haplotype of Jacob. And I'm going to get into that. So anyway, back to the article. It says, afterwards, the Limba tribe in Zimbabwe turned to Parfit and asked to have their DNA tested in order to support their claims of Jewish identity. Parfit agreed and found that many members of the Limba tribe, especially a subclan called Buba, shared the same genetic marker of the Kohen haplotype. Parfit is quick to point out that this DNA marker does not mean that the Limba tribe is Jewish, but rather that the tribe likely migrated to Africa from the Middle East. Since this migration dovetails with oral history of the tribe that they were descended from Israelites, it was widely interpreted that the Limba are genetically Jewish. Quote, the DNA in that case seemed to justify the fact that there was a connection of some sort that solidified their faith and their Jewish or Semitic origin, said Parfit. Many people now believe their claim to be Jewish. The Igbo story now won't have that same support, he said. Parfit himself is Anglican Christian, though he jokes he's never had his own DNA tested for Judaism. Parfit added that in the years since he publicized the Cohen haplotype, people have interpreted the information in many different and surprising ways. On a recent trip to Israel, Orthodox Jews who are trying to rebuild the Third Temple danced around him in ecstasy at the Western Wall because the marking enables them to find genetically pure priests to serve in the temple. And again, I'm gonna stop the article here. You can Google it if you want to read the rest of it. But there's so much wrong with what he said. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. First and foremost, this so-called Cohen modal haplotype. Number one, they're trying to say that's haplogroup J, that the Cohen modal is haplogroup J. And haplogroup J, or haplogroup J1, is a strictly European haplogroup that originated in the Caucasus Mountains. That is emphatically false. There is no way genetically that the Cohen modal is haplogroup J. That's false. See, and this is the narrative that they're pushing. Okay? Jacob's Y DNA haplotype is E1B1A. Period. Period. The Torah tells us who's Ashkenaz, who are the children of Gomer. Those same people with those haplogroups J and haplogroups R, though they are not Hebrew Israelites, not even close. Sure, they might have converted to Judaism. I'll give them that. But being from the ancient Israelite nation, I think not. As a matter of fact, I know not. And this is why it's articles like this that hurts us, because this Cohen modal, first of all, the Lemba, they're our brothers. They're E1B1A, majority of them, okay? They're us. They're Hebrew Israelites. That is the Y DNA haplotype of the ancient Israelite nation. Not no haplogroup J, not no haplogroup R, E1B1B. That's Esau. E1B1B is Esau. Anyway, I don't want to. We're going to get into that in the next thing. I just had to. There's so much wrong with what he said, and he's getting these swabs and tests from all these different people that are not from the Holy Land. I mean, it's really a farce. Okay, it's a farce. So let's go ahead and wrap this up and get into the next segment, which we're going to do directly with the DNA. Now we're into the genetic DNA phase of this whole lesson. This is the meat, if you will. And as I've stated before, there are several prominent men and some women who practice the Judaism faith. I think that's a better way to identify them. That know the truth. They're when it comes to DNA data and regional migration of certain peoples and this and that, they know the truth. This Dr. Eric Elhike, he has a PhD in molecular biology, and he is an Israeli DNA expert. Now, you can say what you want about me or whoever, but clearly his credentials make him a very believable source of information. And so let's get into what he says. He says Jews, a race, genetic theory comes under attack. All right, so let's get it. Okay. All right, he says scientists usually don't call each other liars and frauds. Well, that's how Johns Hopkins University postdoctoral researcher Aaron Elhike describes a group of widely respected geneticists, including Harry Osterer, professor of pathology and genetics at Yeshiva University's Albert Einstein College of Medicine, and author of the 2012 book Legacy, A Genetic History of the Jewish People. For years now, the findings of Osterer and several other scientists have stood virtually unchallenged on the genetics of Jews and the story they tell of the common Middle East origins shared by many Jewish populations worldwide. Jews and Ashkenazianism in particular are indeed one people, Osterer's research finds. It's a theory that more or less affirms the understanding that many Jews themselves hold of who they are in the world, a people who, though scattered, share an ethnic racial bond rooted in their common ancestral descent from the indigenous Jews of ancient Judea or Palestine, as the Romans called it after they conquered the Jewish homeland. Oster's theory is sometimes marshaled to lend the authority of science to the Zionist narrative, which views the migration of modern-day Jews to what is now Israel and their rule over that land as a simple act of repossession by the descendants of the land's original residents. Oster declined to be interviewed for this story, but in his writings, Oster points out the danger of such reductionism. Some of the same genetic markers common among Jews he finds can be found in Palestinians as well. That should tell you something. By using sophisticated molecular tools, Feldman, Oster, and most other scientists in the field have found that Jews are genetically homogeneous. No matter where they live, these scientists say Jews are genetically more similar to each other than to their non-Jewish neighbors, and they have a shared Middle Eastern ancestry. The geneticist research backs up what is known as the Rhineland hypothesis. According to this hypothesis, Ashkenazi Jews descended from Jews who fled Palestine after the Muslim conquest in the 7th century and settled in southern Europe. In the late Middle Ages, they moved into Eastern Europe from Germany or the Rhineland. Nonsense, says Elhaik, a 33-year-old Israeli Jew from Beersheba who earned a doctorate in molecular evolution from the University of Houston. He's the son of an Italian man and Iranian woman who met in Israel. Elhaik, a dark-haired, compact man, sat down recently for an interview in this bare, narrow cubicle of an office at Hopkins, where he's worked for 4 years. In The Missing Link of Jewish European Ancestry, Contrasting the Rhineland and the Khazarian Hypothesis, published in December in the online journal Genome, Biology, and Evolution, Elhaik says he has proved that Ashkenazi Jews' roots lie in the Caucasus, a region at the border of Europe and Asia that lies between the Black and Caspian Seas, not in the Middle East. They are descendants, he argues, of the Khazars, a Turkic people who lived in one of the largest medieval states in Eurasia and then migrated to Eastern Europe in the 12th and 13th centuries. Ashkenazi genes, Dr. Elhaik added, are far more heterogeneous than Oster and other proponents of the Rhineland hypothesis believe. Elhaik did find a Middle Eastern genetic marker in DNA from Jews, but he says it could be from Iran, not ancient Judea. Elhaik writes that the Khazars converted to Judaism in the 8th century, although many historians believe that only royalty and some members of the aristocracy converted. But widespread conversion by the Khazars is the only way to explain the ballooning of the European Jewish population to 8 million at the beginning of the 20th century from its tiny base in the Middle Ages, Dr. Elhaik says. Dr. Elhaik bases his conclusion on an analysis of genetic data published by a team of researchers led by Doron Behar, a population geneticist and senior physician at Israel's Rambam Medical Center in Haifa. Using the same data, Behar's team published in 2010 a paper concluding that most contemporary Jews around the world and some non-Jewish populations from the Levant or Eastern Mediterranean are closely related. Dr. Elhaik used some of the same statistical tests as Behar and others, but he chose different comparisons. Elhaik compared genetic signatures found in Jewish populations with those of modern-day Armenians and Georgians, which he uses as a stand-in for the long-extinct Khazarian because they live in the same area as the medieval state. It's an unrealistic premise, said University of Arizona geneticist Michael Hammer, one of Behar's co-authors of Elhaik's paper. Hammer notes that Armenians have Middle Eastern roots, which he says is why they appear to be genetically related to the Ashkenazi Jew in L. Hike's study. In a news article that accompanied Dr. L. Hike's journal paper, Shlomo Sand, history professor at Tel Aviv University and author of the controversial 2009 book, The Invention of the Jewish People, said the study vindicated his long-held ideas. Quote, "It's so obvious for me," Sand told the journal. "Some people, historians, and even scientists turned a blind eye to the truth. Once to say Jews were a race was anti-Semitic, now to say they're not a race is anti-Semitic. It's crazy how history plays with us." The paper has received little coverage in mainstream American media, but it has attracted the attention of anti-Zionist and anti-Semitic white supremacists, Dr. L. Hike said. Interestingly, while anti-Zionist bloggers have applauded L. Hike's work, saying it proves that contemporary Jews have no legitimate claim to Israel, some white supremacists have actually attacked it. Despite what his critics claim, Dr. L. Hike says that he was not out to prove that contemporary Jews have no connection to the Jewish people of the Bible. He says his primary research focus is the genetics of mental illness, which he explains led him to question the assumption that Ashkenazi Jews are a useful population to study because they're so homogeneous. Dr. L. Hike says he first read about the Khazarian hypothesis a decade ago in a 1970 book by the late Hungarian-British author Arthur Koestler, The 13th Tribe, written before scientists had the tools to compare genomes. Koestler, who was Jewish by birth, said his aim in writing the book was to eliminate the racist underpinnings of anti-Semitism in Europe. Quote, "Should this theory be confirmed, the term anti-Semitism would become void of meaning." And I touched on that earlier. The book jacket reads, although Koestler's book was generally well reviewed, some skeptics questioned the author's grasp of the history of Khazaria. Grorar is not surprised that Dr. L. Hike has stood up against the quote-unquote clique of scientists who believe that Jews are genetically homogeneous. Quote, "He enjoys being combative," Grorar said. "That's what science is," end quote. But I disagree, Mr. Grorar. I salute Dr. L. Hike. I salute Shlomo Sand, and I salute Mr. Arthur Koestler for having the fortitude to simply tell the truth. Okay, men can say whatever, but our DNA does not and cannot lie. You can believe whatever you want to believe. You can say whatever you want to say, but our DNA will reveal the truth. You can even make it difficult for the original Hebrew Israelites to discern or to see whether or not they're E1B1A, but you cannot change the fact that they're E1B1A. Okay, let's be clear. So I salute those three men, and I salute anyone who stands up and has the fortitude to simply tell the truth, right? And that's what they did. You know, they told the truth. So salute to them. So with all that being said, with Dr. L. Hike, who clearly has the credentials, laying the groundwork for the next segment, let's get into the haplogroups that the world identifies as Jewish and what our challenges are moving forward as ancient Hebrew Israelite descendants and possessing the E1B1A Y DNA haplotype of them, and what does that actually mean for us moving forward. So the Igbos were denied their true and natural heritage of that of Hebrew Israelites because this U.S.-based Messianic Jewish group determined that they weren't Jewish by their DNA. And this is why in this segment where I'm going to go over and break down each haplogroup that's actually recognized by the world pretty much as who's Jewish and who's not. And I would imagine that the Jewish Agency of Israel is on board with this because Family Tree DNA is the one behind this list of quote unquote Jewish haplogroups, and Mr. Bennett Greenspan, who is an Ashkenazi Jew, who I spoke about in my groundbreaking 3-hour comprehensive E1B1A video, when I uncovered that he actually did in fact list E1B1A as being present at the start of the ancient Israelite nation, albeit trying to downplay our presence. So I saw right through that, and I called it out and called it for what it was. So let's go. Let's get it. This is the starting out. Okay, let's see here. Haplogroup. Okay, haplogroup J. This is the one you see a lot about and you hear a lot about. It says haplogroup J is the most common Y DNA haplogroup among Jewish men worldwide, and that would be haplogroups J1 and J2. The J haplogroup is of Semitic origin and is overwhelmingly present in the Middle East. And I'm going to show and prove that that haplogroup may be present in the Middle East now, but it did not originate there, and they are not Semitic. This is wrong. This is misinformation. This origin is in line with the origins of the ancient Israelite people, from whom Jews are traditionally believed to descend from, and whose homeland was the ancient kingdom of Israel, now the modern-day state of Israel, located in the Levant. This haplogroup has been found in the Spanish and Portuguese Jewish communities of the Netherlands, which were established after the expulsion from Spain. Many of the Dominican Republic Sephardic settlers in the 18th and 19th centuries immigrated from the Jewish community of Curaçao, which was an offshoot of the Jewish community in Amsterdam, Netherlands. It is safe to assume that many crypto-Jews who immigrated to the New World from Spain in the 15th and 16th centuries, while hiding their Jewishness, were members of this haplogroup as well worldwide. Approximately 40% of Jewish men have been found to belong to haplogroup J. And the Cohen modal haplotype. This is the one that has everyone really stumped in an uproar, because it says the Cohen modal haplotype is found in haplogroup J, which we know that that's genetically impossible. There's no way that haplogroup J is no Cohen modal, meaning that they're from the bloodline directly from Aaron, the priestly line. The Kohens, priests, were the priestly class in ancient Israel, and according to Jewish tradition, they all descend from Aaron, Moses' brother, who himself descended from Levi, son of Jacob. Well, newsflash, all 12 of the sons are from Jacob, and so all 12 sons from Jacob would all have the same haplogroup and haplotype, and it's not J. I'm going to get into that more later. Grandson of Abraham, 46% of men with a Cohen tradition in their paternal line have been found to be part of the Cohen modal haplotype. This percentage is astoundingly high in the field of population genetics and strongly supports the tradition that Cohens have a common ancestor originating in biblical times. This indicates that haplogroup J was the haplogroup that the forefathers of the Israelite nation were a part of. Abraham's land of birth was Ur, or the Chaldeans in ancient Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, which is where this haplogroup may have originated. No, that's not the way it may have originated. Anyway, I'm going to get into that. It should be noted that haplogroup J and even the Cohen modal haplotype can also be found among non-Jews. Now, see, this is the misinformation campaign I'm talking about. First of all, that's double speak. If someone possesses the so-called Cohen modal haplotype, then that means that they're a Levite. They're Cohen modal. There's no way that a Israelite is going to have the Cohen modal if they're not a Cohen modal, if they're not a Levite or from the priestly line of Aaron. So that's doublespeak. That makes absolutely zero sense. But this is the stuff that they do. They throw stuff out there because people don't know. People aren't aware. People aren't privy or to how DNA works. There's no way that a non-Jewish person is going to have basically Jacob's DNA. That's just silly. Particularly those of a Middle Eastern background, and it's not necessarily indicative of Jewish ancestry. Sephardic Jews likely brought this lineage with them to the Dominican Republic from Spain. A member of this project with the tradition of Jewish ancestry on this paternal line, and as a member of this haplogroup, can be considered to be very likely of Jewish descent. A member with no such tradition, but as a member of this haplogroup, would be strongly encouraged to research his family background. And see, my people, that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's the disinformation campaign. They throw in some truth mixed with a bunch of madness and a bunch of falsehood and a bunch of untruths and misconceptions, and it's like they're leading people the wrong way. And it's not lost on me that this haplogroup J is most of your Zionists are haplogroup J, okay, and so they consider themselves the Kohens. I mean, that's how far it's gotten, So that's not lost on me that haplogroup J is mostly claimed by the Zionists who have all the control of who is Jewish in this world, pretty much, and who is not. All right, on to the next segment. See, and clearly it says haplogroup J, place of origin, Caucasus, Eurasia, descendants J1, J2. See, family tree DNA does not control this data. See, when you control when you're in control, you control the narrative. You can put out whatever you want to put out. But clearly, haplogroup J is a European haplogroup. Haplogroup J, haplogroup J1, J2, it's not Semitic. Okay, it's not. But that's what's been being perpetuated because they're in power, they're in control, and that's the narrative. Okay, but it's just simply not true. It does not stand up to historical, biblical, or genetic scrutiny, right? And as you can see, the distribution, maybe you can't see it, but in this distribution chart, again, this data does not belong to family tree DNA, and it clearly shows that all of these groups on here, where haplogroup J are, straight up European, Caucasus, Ireland, Austria, Scotland, France, Iceland, Russia, Germany. Okay, it says of the two main subgroups, J1 takes up four-fifths of the total and is spread on the continent, while J2 is more localized around the Mediterranean, Greece, Italy, Sardinia, and Spain. It's a European, man. All day. There's nothing Semitic about haplogroup J, haplogroup J1. How are they Semitic? Please tell me. How was that Semitic? Iceland? Are you serious? Germany? Really? Semitic? And they say that with a straight face. Come on, my people. Let's look at it. The ancient Semitic people. It says there are several locations proposed as possible sites for prehistoric origins of Semitic-speaking peoples: Mesopotamia, the Levant, East Mediterranean, the Arabian Peninsula, North Africa. Some view that the Semitic originated in the Levant circa 3800 BC and was later also introduced to the Horn of Africa in approximately 800 BC from the southern Arabian Peninsula into the North Africa and southern Spain, with the founding of the Phoenician colonies, such as ancient Carthage in the 9th century BC and Cadiz in the 10th century BC. It says the Semitic family is a member of the larger Afro-Asiatic family. Let me say that one more time. The Semitic family is a member of the larger Afro-Asiatic family. So again, my people, how in the heck is haplogroup J and J1 Semitic, when clearly they are not Afro-Asiatic? They don't look Afro-Asiatic. They don't have the features. They don't have the characteristics. They don't even have they're not from the region of where ancient Semitic speaking people were even from. So please, how are they Semitic? How? But again, the world believes that because that's the people in control. That's what they put out. Okay, so now next segment we're gonna take a look at what do these people look like that possess the haplogroup J and haplogroup J1. Well, let's see. And these, my people, are the prototype for what they want us in the world to believe are Kohen modals from the Levi tribe. These are haplogroup J and J1 recipients right here that you're looking at. Okay. That's what they're selling. The people in power, that's what they're selling. Okay? These people right here, they're saying is a prototype for what Moses, the 12 tribes of Israel, all pretty much looked like. On to the next segment. And here is the second worldwide accepted haplogroup of quote-unquote Jewish ancestry as put out by Family Tree DNA. It says haplogroup E1B1B. I mean, those of you that know me know that I've covered this ad nauseum, you know. But for those who aren't really familiar, let me just kind of go over it. Okay, haplogroup E1B1B. For some reason, and I don't know why, I get this question all the time, and I'm going to always have the same answer. E1B1B is Ham's bloodline. For some reason, and I don't know why, but when the Most High split the nations in Rebekah's womb from Jacob and Esau, and Jacob was E1B1A, Esau defaulted to E1B1B. I don't know why. Maybe it was just convenient. Just keeping it simple. E1B1A, E1B1B. I don't know, but I do know that Genesis 10 and 6, where it lists the sons of Ham, those races of dark races of men, and they are E1B1B, and I have the data that I brought forth to prove it, right? So, and I also have the data of a lot of quote unquote Caucasian men that possesses that Y DNA haplotype. Okay, now, and the conflicting crazy part is that your Ethiopians, they possess the E1B1B because they're Hamites. They're from the bloodline of Ham. Yet they want to say that their DNA doesn't make them Jewish, but the same white men in the same, Ashkenazis or Sephardic or whatever group they claim that possesses the E1B1B, they say that they're Jewish. See what I'm saying? So it's confusing. But it says, this is what Family Tree DNA says. It says, this is the second most common haplogroup, E1B1B, among Jewish men worldwide. It accounts for approximately 20% of Jewish male lineages overall, but among Sephardic Jews in particular, it accounts for approximately 30%. It is North African in origin, and its distribution matches the Afro-Asiatic linguistic expansion, which eventually resulted in the formation of Hebrew in addition to other Semitic languages. Its high prevalence among Jews worldwide certainly supports a founder theory for its origins. It is unlikely that the forefathers of the Israelite nation were part of this haplogroup, since evidence so far supports haplogroup J being the haplogroup of the founding Israelite tribes. Oh my God, it's hard for me to read this stuff, man. It's just so blatantly wrong, and the information is just wrong, man. The high percentage among Jews may be the result of ancient conversions to the Abrahamic faith conducted by tribal members in order to allow marriage to the daughters of the 12 tribes. According to tradition, Jacob, the forefather of Israel, had 12 sons, who later grew from 12 tribes. These tribal heads likely had daughters who had no choice but to marry local men who were converted and integrated into the Israelite tribes before they immigrated to Egypt. Yeah, of course, you're going to try to throw that in there, but that just didn't happen, man. I mean, clearly what they're trying to do is they're trying to give themselves a defense for their false claims. Okay, because we all know how the Most High felt about us mixing with other nations, especially definitely not our women. Get out of here! Like, are you serious? Like, dude, like, knock it off already. But anyway, let's in the next segment. And I'm sorry for the length, people, but I told you this is pretty comprehensive. I mean, I have to go there. I can't, I can't cheat you. I can't cheat, me. I have to. It has to be done. So, sorry for the length. Sorry, not sorry, but it's done when it's done. But I gotta touch on everything. I gotta break it down, okay? Because this is what we're up against. All right. So let's see here. Okay. B1B1B. So let's go. Yeah, the next segment we're gonna go with the people that possess that haplotype, what they look like. And these are the various races of African and European people that possess the E1B1B Y DNA haplotype. Again, like I said, I've proven it to be the Y DNA haplotype of Ham, but for whatever reason, the seeds of Edom / Esau defaulted to E1B1B. So E1B1B is Esau. They're nowhere near Jewish, man. But even though family tree DNA would have us believe that this so-called high prevalence among Jews worldwide with this haplotype, and certainly supports a founder theory for its origin, but it's unlikely that the forefathers of the Israelite nation were part of this haplogroup, which makes absolutely zero sense, man. They're just all over the place, but they're concentrating on the fact that people just don't understand this stuff. They don't know, they don't understand how wide DNA haplotypes and haplogroups work. Okay, so they're saying that, they're saying that E1B1B is supposed to be Jewish, but at the same time they're giving it a nod, but then taking it away. Which is weird and just in itself, but it's just simply genetically impossible. Okay, and then for haplogroup J, that's their claim to fame, that haplogroup J is the founding lineage for the ancient Israelite nation and the possessors of the Cohen modal haplotype. Knock it off. So anyway, on to the next segment. So family tree DNA, which has the largest DNA database in the world, claims haplogroup R and haplogroup I as quote unquote accepted Jewish haplogroups. Again, my people, genetically it's impossible to have different haplogroups to represent the 12 tribes of Israel. It's just, that goes against everything that the Most High said. It goes against our lineage. It goes against our the book of genealogy. It goes against everything that's in Torah. Okay, genetically, it's impossible, and that's why I did a 12 tribe chart and broke that down some years ago. That 12 tribe chart is not helpful to us. It's not. Okay, because again, you got a bunch of different races of nationalities of people, putting them all together, saying that they're all Israel, and it's not that simple. It's not that simplified to be an Israelite by blood. Not to go on a tangent, but to be an Israelite by blood, and I'll say it again, and I'm going to get into the E1B1A next, which is the one I'm sure you all were waiting for. But you have to come from the loins of Jacob. Jacob was one man that had one Y DNA haplotype, that he passed that one haplotype to his 12 sons, and his 12 sons passed it on to their kids and their kids and their kids, and to who we are today with that same Y DNA haplotype, only one. Jacob he wasn't in haplogroup R and haplogroup J and haplogroup E. It's insane. But they count on your ignorance, man. It says, family tree DNA says for haplogroup R, it's the Iberian Peninsula, which consists of modern-day Spain and Portugal. It has been colonized and ruled by several tribal powers throughout history. The identity of the ancient Iberians is unknown. However, it is known that the Celts who came later merged with them to form the Celtiberians, the Atlantic modal haplotype, whatever the hell that is. The most common haplotype in Western Europe is a part of R1B1A2, and it has Celtic and Germanic variations. Do you see the pattern here? So let's scale it back. Haplogroup R are Europeans. Haplogroup I, they're European based. Okay, let's just scale it back. Spaniards, the original one, they're Europeans. Portugal, Europeans. Okay, knock it off. So I'm not going to even waste any more time on that. Haplogroup R is Europeans, but family tree DNA, these are one of the accepted haplogroups for being a Jew in the world, because they said so. All right, this is the one that everyone, I'm sure, has been waiting on. What family tree DNA, again, the largest DNA database in the world, they actually list our haplogroup E1B1A as one of the quote-unquote Jewish haplogroups in the world, which is ironic because a lot of other DNA companies, they don't do that. They don't tell the truth. See, at least Family Tree DNA they told some of the truth. A lot of DNA companies strictly try to keep us sub-Saharan and African. They say nothing about Jewish, ancient Israelites, nothing, right? But at least with Family Tree DNA, they told some of the truth. So let's see. This is the one that I posted when I did that 3-hour comprehensive E1B1A video, and I broke it down. And this is what was used right here from Family Tree DNA, and it says haplogroup E1B1A. This haplogroup is predominantly sub-Saharan African and is the most common haplogroup among African Americans. Now check this out. It says among Jews, it can be found in very small percentages. Even in Jews from Eastern Europe, where there's little, if any, African influence to be found. This indicates that while this haplogroup is certainly, see how I know how to put that word certainly, this haplogroup is certainly not a founding lineage for Jews. Wait for it. It was present in very small amounts at the time of the formation of the ancient Israelite nation. Man, this brings back memories. Let me say that one more time. It said it was present, E1B1A, in very small amounts at the time of the formation of the ancient Israelite nation. So my thing was, okay, so they placed us in Israel. Okay, that's pretty huge. They said that we were there at the formation of the ancient Israelite nations, but see, here's the quick switch. They tried to downplay us, say we were there, but in very small amounts. You see, right? So they told the truth, and then they threw some madness up in there right quick. But for telling half the truth, hey, appreciate you. And then they go on to say, it is possible that this lineage joined the Jewish people along with the mixed multitude described in the Bible during the Exodus from Egypt. For the purpose of this study, members of this haplogroup would be considered unlikely to have direct Jewish ancestry. Wow. See the lengths that they go, man, to keep us just marginalized and keep the truth hidden. Psalm 83:4, my people. Come, let us cut them off from being a nation. Come on now. It says, since the Dominican Republic has a large African influence due to the slave trade, and this would be much more likely origin for a member from this haplogroup. So that's what Family Tree DNA had to say about E1B1A, and I politely tore it down. Okay, I blew it up. I mean, he should have just probably did what everybody else does and just kind of just totally, marginalize us and say that we're not, we're just sub-Saharan and African, and just left the whole us being there at the formation of the ancient Israelite nation alone. You see what I'm saying? So with that little right there, man, it says it all. So now we're going to really get into it. Q, Dr. Yehoshua ben Ephraim. Okay, how was I able to conclude that haplotype E1B1A was that of Jacob without having a sample, a DNA sample from Jacob? Well, guess what? I had something much better than the DNA sample of Jacob. I had the Torah. And remember way back when I first started this presentation, I said, I don't care what kind of Jew you claim to be. If your history, if what happened to you, what's happening to you now, if it doesn't line up in Torah, if you don't see yourself in Torah, if the history of your people is not in Torah, it didn't happen. You're not that people. Okay? I have something better than a DNA sample. I have my belief in Torah. Okay? Now I'm going to show you exactly how and what Dr. Ephraim did to prove and show and prove to the world that haplotype E1B1A was that of the patriarch Jacob and the 12 tribes of Israel. So by virtue of finding us, I found our father Jacob. The Torah tells us what was going to happen to the children of Israel. The Torah tells us that because the children of Israel did not hearken to the words, laws, statutes, and commandments of the Most High, that they were going to be cursed. All right? They were going to be cursed to go to a land that they had never seen, never been to before. They were going to be cursed to go back into slavery by way of ships. They said that they were going to have a wife and they would have no control over the wife, that a slave master would sleep with the wife. I mean, the whole book of Deuteronomy deals with what was going to happen to the children of Israel. And this is prophesied back then. So it was future of what was to come. So I don't care what race of people you try to bring up. No race of people, no race fits the book of Deuteronomy, the curses in the book of Deuteronomy, like the so-called Negro or African American, right? And African American influenced races all over the world. No race of people. The book of Deuteronomy fits everything that happened to us, everything that's happening to us now to a T. Now, that being said, if you don't believe that, then nothing in this presentation will make sense to you, period. And I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything. All right, these are for the people that have spiritual ears that want to hear. Now, with that being said, if you are a believer, if you call yourself a child of Israel, if you call yourself an Israelite and you believe, as I do, that the children of Israel were cursed to go into slavery by way of ships in Deuteronomy 12 and 68, well, guess what? Where did those slaves come from on those ships? If you believe that those were the children of Israel, rather you believe they would be from Judah or a mixture of Judah and Ephraim, whatever the case may be, if you call yourself a believer, right, and you believe that those slaves on those ships during the transatlantic were the children of Israel, well, they had to have come from somewhere, right? As a matter of fact, and those slaves are on the ship, what were their names and what was their DNA? Because guess what? If you were able to find out the DNA of those slaves that was on those ships and you believe them to be the children of Israel, you have to believe that Jacob is the patriarch. And so whatever their DNA is, obviously the logical conclusion is that's what Jacob's DNA is, because they are the children of him. Come on, my people, think. Logic. You don't have to be a geneticist. You don't have to be a microbiologist to get this. Okay, it starts with faith. It starts with your belief in who the children of Israel are. Who do the curses line up with verbatim to a T? What race of people? Who? That would be the Negro. Let's go back to the Zondervan telling you which races came from Ham, the Ethiopians, Egyptians, etc., but not the Negroes. Come on now. The Negroes are the only race of people that possesses the E1B1A Y DNA haplotype. What does that mean? That means that what the Most High said in Deuteronomy 7 and 6, that he was going to make the children of Israel a special nation unto himself above all people on the earth. That with that comes a distinction. What does that mean? Something that separates the children of Israel from every race on the planet. Don't listen to this nonsense of all these different haplogroups of so-called Jewish people. These people are converts. They're not from the seed of Jacob. But they don't want to claim conversion. They want to claim that they're basically the lost children of Israel. They're the seeds of Isaac and Jacob. They're not. As this meme illustrates, Jacob was one man. You see, I got his four wives, the four women that birthed his children, all Negroes. Jacob's Y DNA had to have been E1B1A, because that's what the DNA of those children that was on those ships doing the transatlantic's DNA is. Come on, my people. This isn't Chinese math. You can't believe one and not the other. You can't say, oh, I believe that those are the children of Israel, but say, oh, I don't believe in DNA. That's confusion. God is not the author of confusion. Okay, you can't believe one without the other. Okay, I did the research. The people on those ships, I did the research. They have Hebrew names. That's when I did that video and broke down the scripture and verses. Said, if my people who are called by my name, because if you go to slavevoyages.org, they literally have the names of those slaves that was part of cargo on those slave ships during the transatlantic. And sure enough, as I'm sitting here, those slaves had Hebrew names. Okay, I did the research. Who were those people? Where are they today? Mostly, right? I did my own DNA. My DNA matches up perfectly. My DNA goes all up and through Palestine, all throughout the so-called Middle East. Right? So I put it all together. That 12 tribe chart, again, that does not help us because it's confusing. It adds to the confusion. Jacob didn't birth Jacob nor either of his 4 Negro wives didn't birth an Indian. Okay? They didn't birth 12 different people that have 12 different haplotypes. I mean, listen, we all know that the Most High separated the nations with Jacob and Esau. We know he can do that. But I guarantee you, he did not separate the Y DNA of the 12 tribes of Israel for continuity's sake. He did that for us, not for him. So we would know who's Israel. Because if all these different groups of people were Israel, there's no way for us to really tell and know who's Israel. What by what they do, because they say, or because they practice Judaism? What? So what's happened, my people, where we're at now is because of our ignorance and because none of us was in place of power and control. They've set the narrative. They've provided to the world who they feel Jews are by haplotypes, and that's why our DNA is excluded, right? And again, I know that family tree DNA, they did say that E1B1A, even though they tried to downplay us, they did say that we were there at the formation of the ancient Israelite nation. I think that's probably the closest to quote unquote props that any Ashkenazi Jew or whatever gave us as a shout out. I don't know what you call it, but he did that. Right? So because of that, this is where we are. They're not going to validate who we are. They're not going to verify who we are. Everything that I put forth, I've showed it and I proved it. Starting with Torah. Okay? Jacob was one man. Jacob had one Y DNA. And he passed that one Y DNA to all 12 of his sons, 14 in total, counting Ephraim and Manasseh. So that's why you have different variations of E1B1A. Those are the children of Israel, my people. And I don't care who believes that. I believe it. And I know that to be true. I'm not jumping up and down trying to make anyone believe anything. You believe what you want to believe. Every man's responsible for his own salvation. But understand this, my people. I'm speaking to all my people from here in America, Africa, and abroad. Okay? Don't expect any person that does not look like me and you to validate you or to validate us, because they've kept the truth hidden from us for hundreds of years. You think all of a sudden they're going to get a good heart or good conscience and they'll say, okay, you know what, you got us. For the past 400 something years we've been lying. Yes, you guys are the children of Israel. You got it out of us finally. Okay, yeah, we've been fronting all this time. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So I just say, listen, that's how I did the research. That's how I found out Jacob was E1B1A, starting with the children of Israel, the children who was on those ships during the transatlantic slave trade, researching them, where they came from and what their DNA is, right? Most of us came from the hub of West Africa, but West Africa is a secondary nation for us, because our DNA predates those West African civilizations by thousands of years, which means that we originated somewhere else. We did not originate in Ghana. We did not originate in Cameroon. We didn't originate in those West African countries. No. We originated in Northeast Africa. Back then it was called Canaan. Went through a couple different names. Canaan, Palestine, Judea, Israel. And this is a fact. So this is how Dr. Ephraim was able to find out the Y DNA of the children of Israel being E1B1A, and why it's not accepted. why they say that your DNA says that you're not Israel, you're not Jewish, quote unquote. So let's go. I'm gonna close. I'm gonna do one more segment. I'm gonna do the female version, because again, Family Tree DNA told the truth. One more time with this haplogroup L, which is more like haplogroup L3E, which is what my mom is, and then we're gonna get ready to close this out. Again, sorry, not sorry for the length, but I had to be thorough. Let's get it. So haplogroup L. This is what Family Tree DNA calls the mitochondrial DNA equivalent of haplogroup E1B1A, and I've said that for years, specifically when I initially took my DNA test. It was actually, my mom is L3E, and we're going to get into that. I'm going to read what Family Tree DNA said about haplogroup L, which is the mitochondrial version of E1B1A. And you all will see that, and read between the lines, they know the truth. They're putting some carrots out there, but putting a bunch of stuff on top of it, and making people think and guess and rethink, and to make it confusing. But here's what Family Tree DNA says about haplogroup L. And actually consider this a Jewish haplogroup. It says haplogroup L can be considered to be the mitochondrial DNA equivalent of DNA haplogroup E1B1A, in that it is of sub-Saharan African origins. This haplogroup is found, there we go, in very low numbers among Jews. There to go with the very low numbers. Its presence among individuals with strong Jewish tradition on their maternal line and who do not have a recent origin in Africa can perhaps be attributed to an ancestor from the mixed multitude that came out of Egypt with the Israelites, as described in the Bible. My people, as much as they're trying to suppress the truth in this description, I mean, it's clear as day. They know the truth, man. E1B1A and haplogroup L3E, man, is Hebrew Israelites all day. E1B1A is the start of the formation of the ancient Israelite nation, and they know this to be the truth. But they're in power, so they get to control the narrative and phase us out and not even recognize our haplogroup as what we are, not Jewish, but as Hebrew Israelites, the nation that our people come from. So they go on to say that for individuals with speculative Jewish ancestry on their maternal line, this lineage likely indicates that whatever Jewish traditions are present on the line were adopted perhaps because of a Jewish husband several generations ago. It is possible that the Moors brought this lineage to Spain during the Muslim conquest, but this haplogroup is found in minority percentages among North Africans. Still, descent from a Moorish convert to Judaism is possible. The strong African influence in the Dominican Republic makes descent from a freed slave far more likely for a member of this project, unless Jewish tradition is present on the maternal line as well as knowledge of a Jewish ancestor on the maternal line. A bunch of double speak, injecting stuff, maybe this, maybe that, just really, and it's a bunch of BS, man, is what it is. Okay, so I'm going to bring forth the mitochondrial data from my mom and what it said, and it lines up because again they told the truth, and I've said that for years. Mitochondrial L3E or haplogroup L is the female version of E1B1A. So let me bring that forth. So around here, at the end of the day, I'm going to always let the Bible speak. Okay, Torah is our foundation. Torah will always be our foundation because of what Torah, the data that I found in Torah. Torah led me to the research that I ended up with. This meme you guys are looking at, several people have used this meme. This meme is all over the internet. This is a meme that I put together based on my research by grace and mercy of the Most High, and it's talking about haplogroup E1B1A is actually the formation of the ancient Israelite nation. in spite of what everyone else tries to say or try to downplay or laugh at us and laugh us to scorn and, this and that. Doesn't matter. You can say what you want, you can think what you want. I know in my heart of hearts what's the truth, and my people that have spiritual ears to hear, they know the truth. And this is the truth. Haplogroup E1B1A is the Y DNA haplotype of the children of Israel walking around the earth today. Unfortunately, majority of them don't know who they are. But I'm doing my part. That's all I can do. By grace and mercy of the Most High, I'm doing my part. It said this haplogroup E1B1A is found predominantly among Bantu, Negro descendants, to include but not limited to the African Limba, many West African tribes, the Igbo Jews, the Yoruba Jews, the African Americans, West Indian, Brazilians, Haitians, and other Negro-influenced races throughout the Caribbean and scattered all across different nations. Contrary to false DNA reporting, this is not a sub-Saharan or Hamitic haplogroup. It is Semitic or Shemitic in origin. Negroes have been identified as the lost children of Israel. Dr. Yehoshua ben Ephraim. And we've come here, my people. Family tree DNA, again, they gave some of the truth, mixed with a bunch of other stuff. But haplogroup L, which is a mitochondrial version of E1B1A, this is my mom's haplogroup, L3E, and it lines up perfectly with the so-called Bantu expansion, which we all know now was a Hebrew expansion. And there are some Bantus out there who don't want to accept that as well. And well, whatever, I don't care. You accept what you want. It is what it is. Everyone's responsible for their own salvation. I'm not jumping up and down getting anyone to believe anything. Either you get it and you don't, or you don't. And that's on you. I love them that love me. And that's just what it is. I do what I do for those that have a penchant for what I do and have spiritual ears to hear. That remnant is very small, okay? And only a remnant of us is going to return to the Most High. And that's just the harsh reality. I pray for you all, but like I said, I'm not in the business of convincing you of anything, okay? No one had to convince me. I heard and I took to it like a fish to water, okay? And you're talking to a man that's been, my journey has been filled with, oh my God, I've been all over the place. I'm a Sunni Muslim. I was a nation of gods and earth. So, you name it. So, but when I heard the truth, it spoke to me. Like I said, I took to it like a fish to water. So, haplogroup L3E, this was given by the DNA company I went through some years ago when I first took my my DNA test. And this is my mom. It says haplogroup L3E originated about 45,000 years ago in Central or Northeast Africa. And that's key. Northeast Africa. That's Israel, my people. It's contrary to what people say, talking about all this Eurasia and all this other stuff and Asia Minor and all this bunch of foolishness. Israel sits on the African tectonic plates, which means, since that is true, Israel is in Africa. Specifically, Israel is in Northeast Africa. There's no such thing as Middle East. That is a European construct. Because if there's a Middle East, well, where's the Middle West? Where's the Middle North? And where is the Middle South? Right. That is a European construct. There's no Middle East. It's all Africa. I did a video on that too. Well, that's the key. Northeast Africa then spread south with the migration of the Bantu-speaking people over the past 4,000 years. And again, I say our history was well before that. And if you scroll down, look down a little bit further, it says, example populations, Bantu speakers, African Americans, boom, boom. Because we're one and the same. All Negroes are essentially quote-unquote Bantus. Even the Limbas, Igbos, we're all Bantus, basically. Because that's what the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary was talking about when it said Ham became the progenitor of the dark races, but not the Negroes. Yeah, the Negroes, that passage was talking about was the Bantus. I did a video on that as well. So there we go, my people, and here we are. The challenge that we face, as the lost children of Israel, is knowing the truth and basically, not being able to let the world know, because people still make fun of us. Our own people make fun of us. They laugh at us, like it's such a, like it's a joke that we would be the chosen people of God. Like, yeah, right, you know. So all I can say is I'm going to end with a prayer, okay? But I'm going to say this. I'm going to end this lesson. Sorry, not sorry for the length. It was necessary. Don't look for anyone, any man or woman, regardless of race, creed, whatever, to validate you. As long as you and we know the truth and we live our life accordingly, we get back to that covenant with the Most High, He will repay. Let Him lead us. Let Him continue to guide us. Let Him be our refuge. Okay? The harsh reality is, the reason why we are in the position that we're in, no power, no control or nothing, is because we're living out the curses, man. We were kicked off our land. I mean, I don't even want to get into all that. I want to end this lesson because since I've already covered everything, I'm not going to do a summation with going through all the negative stuff. What I'd like to do right now is encourage you all with a prayer. Psalm 91. Be encouraged, my brothers, sisters, and sojourners of Israel, for the Most High sees and knows all, and He is most gracious and most merciful. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in Him will I trust. Surely He shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler, and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with His feathers, and under His wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. Only with thine eyes shalt thou behold and see the reward of the wicked, because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation. There shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come near thy dwelling. For He shall give His angels charge over you, to keep you in all thy ways. They shall bear thee up in their hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. Thou shalt tread upon the lion and adder. The young lion and the dragon shalt thou trample under feet. Because He hath set His love upon me, therefore will I deliver him. I will set him on high, because he hath known my name. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life will I satisfy him and show him my salvation. Ahaya Bayashim, Yeshua HaMashiach Baruch Adonai. Shalom elect. Be of good cheer.